Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We are going to wrap up this week, as we always do, with an album review, where we go through an entire album track by track, exploring each song in isolation as well as its placement in the larger artwork. Today we're going to be looking at a band called Sufferer. Doesn't sound like we're going to have a good time today because the album is also called Sufferer. This seems to be the only album they've ever made. Came out 2017, coming up on almost being a decade old here. We have 10 tracks ahead of us, but only 36 minutes of music. Most of these songs are between the 3 to 4 minute range, though we do have a short 90-second intro, and we do have a 6-minute lengthier track towards the end of the album. Let's dive in though. Starting off with the track If. I do know where some of these songs move together though, so we actually are going to move If into Then, which is track 2, and combined we're going to be looking at about 4 minutes of music there. Let's dive in. Haunting is certainly a good word for this.
If I'm happy in dreams, but it fades with the day. Is it gone? Is it gone? Is it gone? If I chase and fall asleep and pray, I never have to wake. Is it wrong? Am I wrong? Am I wrong? The moment is past, something whispers the dream is decay. Is it God? Are you God? If you're God, deliver me, carry me, leave me alone, let me slay. I can't tell what I want.
If I could fall back to sleep,
If I could fall back to sleep just for a second, if I could just close my eyes, what will I wake the fuck up? Don't wake up, oh no, it won't remain.
Yeah, okay.
No things will change. No, nothing's constant when some things still feel like they
The rhythmic sharpness between the drums and guitar in that first section, so good.
Just comes back.
This is going to be a fantastic album review. I can already tell. I really hope they keep this energy up. I mean, this is 2 out of 10 tracks. We're a fifth of the way done. They just got to keep this up, man. I'm so excited. This is, this is post-hardcore. We don't get too much of that on the channel. This is, such a strong opening here. Track 1 comes in with these beautifully melancholic, dark guitars, creating a lot of, what's the word? Like smooth movement between notes. There's a lot of ringing out of strings in order to create these dense harmonies. And then that all gets thrown to the side as we come in with this heavy, rhythmic, sharp stuff. Drums come in, the guitars shift from these, longer held out notes into these very sharp rhythmic tones. The entire band, vocals, drums, bass, guitar, everyone just locks in on this single rhythm. And then it just takes us all the way to the end of the track there, just really leaning to this almost like a forward momentum. Not a lot of intensity. Well, I mean, the music's intense, but the momentum isn't. It's sort of just one foot in front of the other, continuous. That takes us to this very high squeal. This repeated tone. No, you know what it was? It was a really high tone being held out with the low end being scooped out of it until it's just this high-pitched sound. And then that takes us into the guitar riff in track 2. Here it's just like this repeated tone over and over and over, and then they slowly fade an alarm clock into it, and it's the same pitch. That's clever. That's clever. From here, it is just a momentous ride through this 2.5 minute track. It doesn't ever seem to hit the brakes. It is constant. There's energy and drive and momentum, and it's just constant. You don't really get too much of a break from it. We do return back to a lot of that rhythmic jaggedness, particularly in this first verse, I'm going to call it, but I don't know if that's actually what it is. The structure on this song kind of escaped me, and I'm not too sure if this does use a traditional verse-chorus idea or not. But the drums, the bass, and the guitars all work together for these incredibly sharp rhythmic devices, really punctuating the notes themselves with gaps of space around them. Sometimes it's just, the space between 2 eighth notes, but they also use rests of not playing anything and really allowing these gaps to exist within the phrasing itself, and basically using emptiness as much as the sound that they're creating with their instruments in order to craft this sharpness, just the immediacy of either sound or silence. There isn't really a lot of legato playing here where notes, nicely mold into each other. It's all just very sharp, abrupt notes. Even the silences are very sharp and abrupt. Probably some sort of post-production going on there, really tightening up any of the palm muting or maybe even hand silencing that the drummer might be using in order to achieve some of these, in order to hyper accentuate the sharpness of these stops where the sound just cuts off and it's just a gap of silence there. And then that takes us into the chorus, which is a lot of chords. It works. It kind of lightens the song up a little bit. Not that it creates something that is bright or beautiful. We're still engaging with rather heavy chord progressions in here, but we do get to move away from the very sharp, quick moving riffage into something that kind of exists for a moment before moving on to the next idea. It feels like we slow down just ever so slightly. It is pretty typical to see post-hardcore do stuff like this. And of course, as soon as we get out of this chorus, it's back to the driving, cutting, sharp riffage again. There is a bridge somewhere in here. The bass kicks us into that with a couple of notes in total isolation, the bass just by itself. We do have clean vocals somewhere in, I think it was the second verse or the section that came after the chorus. Again, I don't know if I should call these them because I don't know if we ever returned back to that chord-based section for me to have called that a chorus. It just fills in the space that choruses typically do in songs like this. But I still think this is a fairly linear track, listening to it purely from a musical angle. Maybe from a lyrical angle, there are verse chorus sections, but there's very little repeated ideas going on, like note for note repetition. We do return back to a sharper idea like the first verse, but is it the exact idea? I don't think so. I'm pretty sure there are new ideas in here, whether that's new guitar punctuations, which we'll touch on that in a second, or new just general riffs, the ones that make up a bulk of the section. Maybe the notes are different. It just doesn't sound the same to my ears. I didn't immediately get that, oh, this is the verse feeling. So, and then we have another high-pitched sound, and this just brings in tension. It's a repeated, probably half-step interval, just creates a lot of harmonic dissonance on one of the guitars, and it just keeps coming in and in and in, like every note, and it's just this alarm at the end of the song. It feels like we're in danger. This song doesn't really let up. It feels constantly dark, dreary, antagonistic. It's difficult to describe because I do enjoy every moment of this. I found this to be a rather fun set of songs here. This is my home genre. This is the kind of stuff I like to listen to in my own time. I've never heard of Sufferer, but if the rest of the album's like this is going in a rotation. I'm going to be checking this album out more often, and I'm going to be a bit disappointed that it seems like this was their only output. But I don't want that to discredit the emotional impact that's going on in these tracks either. This is hyper-focused on a high level of anxiety. There is darkness, there is weight, there is tension, there is a breakneck speed throughout a lot of this stuff. It never really feels like it slows down. It is, as the word I like to use for this, antagonistic. It's a song that actively makes me want to feel like I am in danger, like I am overwhelmed, like I am overburdened. And I think it does a fantastic job of that. Right from the start, we get that emotional resonance in If, with those really dark, moody, melancholic guitars. I think that really sets the stage for a lot of the more aggressive sounds that are coming in later that are still not going to lighten up the mood at all. Whether they are sharp and very abrupt and feeling like you can't catch your breath because the song is rapidly moving between different ideas, or we are playing with those really tense half-step harmonies to create the sounds of an alarm. A very noisy, aggressive harmony designed to feel like something is off, something is wrong. It's the reason that we use these types of harsh intervals in most alarm sounds in real life. It's a disruptive tone. It doesn't create the feeling of peace or positivity. It definitely creates tension and constriction in those who hear it. And we get a lot of that in here too. There's also overlapping vocals. It's tough to keep up with what's going on with those. That feels overwhelming in a lot of ways. Again, though, I like that. I'm a huge fan of multiple vocalists, having all these textures at the same time, call and response, just all over the place. I love it. It sounds great to my ears, but it also represents a lot of this tension and anxiety. I'm going to try my best to balance these two sides, because if the rest of the album is like this, I'm going to have a blast. But I don't think that the intention of at least these two songs in particular are to have fun. I do think that the post-hardcore is more of a vehicle to explore these darker, tenser, heavier ideas. And like I said, I'm going to have a blast with this album, but I don't think that's the point of the art. And I think that's a really interesting midpoint, because when we check out heavier metal tracks, gloomier, more depressing, even tense, aggressive, anxious-filled, and weighty stuff, I tend to lean into that because I'm experiencing that with the music. Extreme metal is extreme to me. And so these feelings are both in a sound that I don't typically listen to on my own, that I don't typically derive enjoyment out of. And so from that perspective, I'm already not really enjoying myself musically. That's not to say that I hate listening to extreme metal. It's just not something that I derive a lot of joy from on a purely casual level. I get a lot of intellectual love and appreciation out of more extreme metals. The artistic side, I get to appreciate artists working within their craft. It's just not a sound that I would go and listen to on my own usually. And so all of that adds into the more aggressive storytelling in the music. Here, though, I'm on polar opposites here. I'm loving this sound. And so I think my experience through this album is going to be very different from the artistic intentions of the album. And I think this is one of the first times that might be showing up. It'll be interesting to see what the lyrics are about, because it's quite possible the lyrics don't have to be anything negative. And that would be another interesting wrench in this entire thing. Two more things I want to touch on before we move on. First is guitar punctuations, the ways to end a phrase. Maybe we'll have 3 bars of pretty straightforward. We just have 2 or 3 notes. We're making some rhythmic stuff out of it. And it's, it's sharp and jagged, but it's not melodically moving, right? Any change in pitch is more of a texture element, just to change up the way it feels without telling a story melodically. But then at the end of that, we'll have some wild guitar duet, and they'll just be blast through a few different notes, or they'll use heavy tension at the end of this while moving, in an escalating or diminishing pitch phrase. And, the more I think about this, all right, I'm going to state this, but I might be wrong. I'm curious who Sufferer's inspirations are. Although this is 2017 also, I want to look at something real quick. Because the specific guitar movements on this album remind me of the ways that phrases are wrapped up on Hail the Sun's albums. Particularly New Age Filth and Divine Intertension, which are the 2 albums that I've listened to from them, but both of them came out after this. So I wonder if Hail the Sun was influenced. Well, is Sufferer even a big band? 16,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. No, they're rather unknown. That doesn't mean that Hail the Sun didn't listen to them, but it also doesn't show that it does. It's not good proof there. And of course, it's not like Hail the Sun is doing anything totally unique. There's certainly other post-hardcore bands who have, well, even swancore bands who use the same type of phrasing, same way of wrapping up a phrase in particularly verse sections. But yeah, anyways, I'm going to have to look that up later and see if I can't find anything. What would I even look up, though? Was Sufferer influenced by Hail the Sun? I can't look that stuff up. If anyone has info on that, let me know. There's definitely some more technical, progressive post-hardcore influence on this band, though. That's what I will say. And like I said, Hail the Sun is just, that's my point of reference, because it's one of the more progressive, noisier post-hard. Actually, another one, the Mars Volta. I hear a little bit of them. That might be more accurate, actually, not Hail the Sun. I hear Mars Volta in those noisier phrase punctuations, the more driving ideas that happen at the end of the groovier, chunkier riffs. Yeah, that's probably it right there. But again, I have no way of confirming any of this. So if any of you know interviews, or maybe the guitarists were like, yeah, dude, we used to listen to Mars Volta all the time, and I just practiced all those riffs, and I guess some of it bleeds into the music or something like that, let me know, because I'm kind of curious. I like kind of seeing how music evolves over time through multiple people's perspectives and skills, and who influences who, and kind of chronicling the evolution of a sound over time. But yeah, so those punctuating phrases, they show up all over the place on this, and it's a nice sort of mishmash where you're kind of chugging stuff 1 second, and then bam, you get these like really tense, fast moving ideas, and it creates a bit of a pendulum, and you get this nice contrast even just within a 4-bar phrase or an 8-bar phrase in the verse. The other thing I want to bring up is, of course, the vocals. As far as I can tell, there are 3 distinct styles in here. As far as timbre, I hear at least 2 vocalists. I'm going to assume that one of them is doing 2 different styles, which is what creates our 3 there. This shows up kind of all over the place. Right from the start, we were getting dual vocal harmonies on harshes. I think that was in track 1. Track 2 showcased harmonized cleans, layering cleans against heavies, layering heavies against heavies, call and response, where you have one vocal center, they stop singing, another one comes in on the left, they start singing, the center comes back in, almost conversational style. There's so many different ways that these vocals are used. And like I said, we probably have somebody doing clean and harsh, and then a second person just doing harshes, and there's our 3 right there. That's pretty typical. Regardless, there's a lot of vocal work going on, and I love it. Every time a new vocal idea came in, I was like, yep. And that's just 4 minutes of music. We got a few different riffs in that. We had beautiful legato style playing. We had really intense rhythmic focus playing. We had crazy noise. We had melodic stuff. We had texture-based stuff. We had rhythmic-based stuff. I mean, this is just a smorgasbord of post-hardcore ideas all wrapped up into this very dark, moody, gloomy, overbearing, anxious atmosphere. And the sheer cohesive contrast that we got across this 4-minute segment right here was just a joy. It really was. Let's dive into some lyrics for If and then we'll hit the next duo of songs, Sword and Chair. All right, these 2 tracks lyrically can be understood as one entire work. In fact, the ideas, they play off of each other so well. With If, we have somebody who is in a lot of mental and emotional pain. It seems that the only time they're ever happy is in their dreams, but they know that that is bound to fade. It's also ephemeral. It's not real. It's all in their mind. It says, if I'm happy in the dreams, but it fades with the day, is it gone? If I chase that, fall asleep and pray I never wake up, am I wrong? Basically saying that nothing in their waking life, it gives them as much joy as the false happiness they have while they're asleep. Is wanting to sleep forever a bad thing? Is that the wrong way to perceive? Maybe he's saying, am I wrong in life? But maybe also, am I wrong in this situation? Verse 3, though, says, the moment has passed, something whispers, the dream has decayed. Is it God? Are you God? If you're God, deliver me, carry me, leave me alone, let me sleep. I can't tell what I want. So we not only have somebody who seems to be emotionally distraught, but it also influences their perception of reality, what they need in this moment. They don't actually know how to fix their situation. He says, deliver me, carry me, leave me alone. These don't work together. If this is a God, he can either deliver you or leave you alone or carry you. Like, they're all very different ideas. And then to wrap that up with, I can't tell what I want. And I think that's interesting, specifically saying the word want rather than need. It's not necessarily a way to improve their situation, but just to make this specific moment better. A want rather than a need. This takes us into track 2's Then. We have the alarm going off. This goes along with the ideas of sleep and finding sleep to be more pleasurable than being awake. And it kicks off, if I could just go back to sleep just for a second, if I could just close my eyes. He says, but don't wake up hopeful, because that doesn't remain. Don't plan out your day, because that will change. Nothing's constant, but some things feel like they are, and those don't go away. This, I think, shows us more about how this character feels, how they perceive their life, their day-to-day goings, is that anything that is good or could be good is subject to change. Everything is actually subject to change, except the things that you want to change. No, they're static. They don't go away. The good things disappear. The bad things stick around. So don't move. Don't stray an inch from your room. The world is vast and it has no place for weak-willed, attention-seeking victims. You're better off keeping to yourself. So right here, we have moved from a person who is, like I said, dealing with some mental stuff, into seeing directly into their mind, showcasing how they perceive the world around them, but also how they perceive themselves. I don't know who this is, because we have shifted from a first-person point of view, if I could fall back to sleep, to an implied you. Don't wake up. Don't move. Don't stray an inch. It has no place for weak-willed, attention-seeking victims. We don't have a you in here, but it is implied. The I is missing. This could be an external voice, or it could be an internal voice, with the idea of the belittlement here. It could very well be a lack of self-esteem and an internal voice perpetuating that. The next stanza talks about trying to hide it from everyone else, but also knowing that everyone knows. He says it's a private thing, my lack of self-esteem, my diminishing mental health. He says, but they all know. He says, if people ask or if they start to sense that I seem withdrawn, I can just deny it, but it shows on my face. The way that I act, and it shows in my voice when the words start to crack the door wide open. This is a really nice use of momentum through this line, using the word crack to say that the voice is starting to crack, but also moving us into the next idea here. It says, crack the door wide open, take a step, take a breath, suck it up. There's an audience waiting and they all know. So we have this idea of masking going on here. Just get out there and do it, and just be perfect. The audience is watching. Let's just go for it. But then underneath that, there's another voice. It's written in parentheses. I don't know how this is incorporated into the track. Maybe this is the call and response point I was talking about. But after saying crack the door wide open, another voice says leave it shut. The voice says, or the primary voice says, take a step, take a breath, just suck it up, just get through this. And right after the suck it up part, another voice says, you're bound to fuck it up. And this rhyme scheme, I think, works really well here to showcase the two sides, but as one. They're not completely separated from each other. It's not two totally different ideas. It's pretty much the same fluidity of phrasing. It's pretty much the same fluidity through the line, pretty much the same amount of syllables, and the one or two changes have rhymes to them. It lines up well. I think this shows how incorporated this second voice, this diminishing voice of the low self-esteem, how incorporated it is into this person's life. To be able to anticipate any sort of positive notion here, even if that positive notion is, let's just get through the day, it's still more positive than you suck, just sit in your room all day and forget about the world, by contrast. But it can anticipate that and lay something alongside it that isn't too dissimilar. Like looking at a funhouse mirror of opinion. That's just really well done there. The next stanza is about trying to, again, mask. It says, slipping through the crowds and cities. I hope they don't take notice or meet my gaze. I'm not trying to stand out. And then it says, I tear through every wall as though it were paper, and I hunt you down and hold your face to the mirror. Is it distorted? Has it twisted your features? Oh, they all know. Once again, another voice shining through here, trying to bring our character down. And it just wraps up with a mantra of stay in, stay in, stay in, where the walls can contain you, the covers can protect you, and the doors never open. Just shut yourself off from the world. Yeah, these two songs are heavy thematically. I think they do a great job of not just telling us about this person, but showing us through music, through the multi-vocal approach, through the layered approach, linguistically showing us things. It's really well done too, I think. It doesn't feel judgmental, it doesn't feel sensationalist, it does feel very heavy though, which I suppose for some people could be very real. I'm curious if the rest of the album is going in this direction then. I guess we can only have one way to know. Let's kick off our next group of songs. We have Sword and Chair. Like I said, together this is about 8 minutes long. Let's dive into it.
To me,
rising intensity,
To pull myself together, gain composure, take a breath and just
tension.
Exhale, I am in control, and if I wait, the feeling passes.
So this newly founded confidence is admirable, it's shattered at its brain, and now it's standing in my way. No one has their life together, no one has it figured out. They all make the best of it while you take the worst parts and stitch them all together.
Great use of space in that last section to give the vocals a bit of a highlight and allowing the tension to consistently build.
It feels so good to follow the sun. It feels so good to follow the sun. What the fuck are we falling for? Breaking through the confidence and panic grabs a hold of my neck. It drags me through the shadows closer to the door. Whether it's an entrance or an exit, it's up to you in that day. Parts of me are screaming. Some part of me can't make out a word. I can't make out a word. I can't make out a word.
Dang.
Paranoid hypnosis, I collapse. We gotta ride where we want it. Give me up, give me up, give me up now. Fear is punching hard, bomb is dead. Right out. Make you run for it. Salvage what you can and just stitch them all together. Make analogy and stick it full of pins so you'll remember. You're in this alone. You made yourself a martyr. It feels so good to follow the sun. It feels so good to follow the sun. What the fuck are we falling for?
A rare bit of levity. Not only just the nice light production on the vocals, but also a more welcoming chord progression. A little bit of tension though.
Out of the water, it surrounds me. Picks me up into the sky and wraps me up until I'm drowning. Don't bother to save me.
That rising chord,
Take hold and change me.
each one adding a little bit more tension than the previous, like it's coming up around you.
You can't pull somebody out if you ain't never known how deep they were.
Yeah, you hear the low end coming around. It's distorted, muddy. Any sort of joy is going to be replaced with apparently that.
I know the warning signs. I know the warning signs. I haven't got them in others. I could have helped, but never made it effort. They could have let it down.
Such a groovy riff though.
Illegally promises words and I'll let you be. I am the dark deep flame you long for. I drove through tunnels and I cried, now can't believe it. I'm the enemy is longing and looks for death. Move along. The critics that you feel are all how selfish can you be? Pay respect. Cause I'm okay to you, they're rumbling, thank God it wasn't me.
It's so groovy. The super syncopated riff plus the tom heavy drums. This is like the fourth time we've used palm muting also with these quick 16th notes. What is this drum pattern? Harmonizing the riff too? Come on. Dude, they're too good at this. They are too good at this. Okay. Track 3. I don't really have a lot to add to that specific song. I do have some topics that I want to bring up. I'm going to bring them up a little later though, about the album in general, but I think that song really locked him in. But it continued on with a lot of what I was talking about as far as their writing on Then, which is about shifting between, more legato playing and sharper playing, really great use of space between notes, and the multiple vocalist thing. What I think that Sword does phenomenally well, though, that the other three haven't done, is the way that it controls pacing, having the lulls against the highs. And, bringing the song down to basically nothing for a long time and creating tension through the lack of things going on. There's usually little harmonic movement in those, and it's usually a bit of a tenser chord just being played over and over, implying something else is going to happen, and we will grow out of those into explosive moments. And that'll give us the really big peaks on that track. But there's, they came back down to those lulls too. Really creating space for the vocals to shine through, while again just building tension. We also had the beautiful elements in Sword, and I like those. Nice bit of levity. I wouldn't necessarily say that it's overwhelming joy as far as emotion goes, but it's certainly better than a lot of the heavy, anxious weight that a lot of this album focuses on. And so it is a moment of levity, assuming that this is a concept album and that the character from If and Then is being continued into these tracks here. It's a bit of levity in their life that we haven't really heard musically represented really at all on this album. So I like that we got the first one, but then we also dropped into some heavy stuff after that, so abruptly getting out of that. And the second time we heard it was the outro, which normally I would say kind of goes on a bit longer than it needs to, but I think it does a great job at artistically creating this false sense of security, thinking that it's actually going to be a normal thing. This is just how things are going to be, and then having that rumble scoop in underneath and build into Chair. And Chair just kicks in with this sick riff. Absolutely love this. I mean, dude. As far as memorable riffs go, I don't know if anything's going to top this one. It almost has, between the riff itself and its syncopation with its, it's varying groups of notes. You know, sometimes we'll get 2, sometimes we'll get 3, sometimes we'll get 4, and it just kind of changes up where the accent is based on that. But also with the drums going on in the background and the heavy use of bass kick and toms in order to create a lower end element in the rhythm, there's almost something that begins to dance around more Latin rhythmic elements in that track, and it just ends up being super groovy between the two of them. But we actually kick the song off with a highly distorted version of this. Lots of compression and probably some sort of part of the tone itself being filtered out and then slowly added back in. It sounds like electronic glitch actually for a moment until it comes into focus on the very first beat where there's vocals and we get the full sound of the guitar from that point on. But that's another thing that I think adds on to this growing feeling of dread, right? Because the previous song we ended on a pretty positive note contextually, but this rising, something coming in underneath and building around, you can really feel this tension sweeping in. And then this sound is what comes directly after that. All of that, the light guitar playing and that atmospheric stuff, that all goes away. And all we have is this guitar riff. You can tell something isn't positive about the notes chosen, but it's not quite in focus yet. It's almost as if you'd just woken up and you're waiting for the eyes to snap into focus so that you can go about your day. Now, granted, I don't think most people take this long to visually get into focus, but it feels like that, kind of being a bit groggy and getting your body to see what's going on, but taking that into a bit more of an emotional realization of thinking things are fine and slowly seeing things come into focus to realize they're not. And I think that the entire ending of Sword and the beginning of Chair do a great job of sneaking this feeling in and allowing us to, in a sense, fluidly transition from more calm, laid-back atmosphere into this driving sound and moving from a sense of calm into a sense of anxiety. It isn't necessarily musically fluid, but I think the story it tells naturally moves between these ideas, and they do a great job of capturing this growth from one end of a spectrum to another. And then from that point on, dude, it is just tension and sick riffage. We are either playing this really cool rhythmic idea, or we're shifting over to just hold a note and play it a lot. And there's a chirpiness that comes in some of these places too. And y'all have probably told me how they achieve that on another track, because I don't think this is the first time we've heard it. But it almost sounds like we are combining the pitched elements of strumming over the bridge, over the body of the guitar, but also the chirpiness of strumming above the nuts. The little bit of string area that's above the neck of the guitar but lower than the tuning knobs. And maybe, this just clicked in my head. Maybe it's actually past where you would normally strum on the guitar, moving away from the neck. Maybe that's where you can achieve this sound, the chirpiness of the higher strung strings while still catching the notes, the pitches based on, holding parts of the string down. I don't know. It works though, because it creates this feeling of high strung tension while still leaning into a note that you can choose. And the note that they choose over and over and over just feels tense. It wants to go somewhere else based on the music that's existing around it. It is a leading tone that we're not allowing us to go anywhere. We're just sitting on it and there's tension. It's like, dude, I need to resolve. I'm pointing this way to that note. Let's go there. And the guitarist is like, nah, we're sitting on this note. Just get used to it. And it's just like, it's this ever building tension that works sonically because of the texture of the note being played, but also the pitch of the note. And it's just really, really great. I don't know, an ingenious use of texture there. Knowing how to get specific songs out of your instrument so that you can not just pick the right note to play, but the right way to play that right note. I mean, that's just good stuff. And like I said, we pretty much just bounce between those two ideas. We're either holding out a tense tone or we have super groovy stuff going on. And that is a wild pendulum to swing on, because one side I'm like, dude, can we get going? And then the other side I'm like, yeah, dude, let's dance through this. Let's stay in this forever. I love this section. And I still think that most of this track is probably going to be read from a negative perspective, at least lyrically. But once again, I'm just really enjoying the sounds of this album. And I think that the groovy section on this track in particular is something that is going to get stuck in my head, and it's going to be something I return to all the time. I mean, right now I have a song stuck in my head, and I've probably listened to it half a dozen times over the past week, and it doesn't get it out, and it's just there. And Sufferer's Chair is going to be one of those songs in the future where I just hear this guitar riff and I'm like, I gotta go hear that. And it's just not going to leave my head. I'm going to listen to it half a dozen times over the course of a week. Just because it's such an earworm. It's so good. So the two of these songs, they do wildly different things, but they work really well together in the storytelling of it. Having highs, having lows, more tense elements, calmer elements, and having the calm elements be a sort of false flag, a false sense of security, and feeling this sweeping energy pull you into something heavier. And the raw tension of that aftermath of this it's low intensity. It's probably a positive element in this person's life, just to have this sort of more neutral, calm section. But yeah, just like If and Then work so well together, I can't imagine listening to Sword without Chair. Even though I think that the transition between the two songs isn't perfect. It's not one of those songs where like musically you have to listen to it. I just feel like the themes and the story of Sword move into Chair so well that it's like two chapters in a novel that just play off of each other so well. Like, yes, there's a stop point there. You can easily not go to that next track. But it's so weird to read this part of the story without the accompanying, second half of it. They're just so intertwined that way. All right, I was talking about some more global ideas I want to bring up. And as we are approaching the halfway point on this album, I feel like, now's a good time as ever to bring them up. Tension control is something they do phenomenally well. Whether it is sonic tension, just using sounds that don't quite feel right. Maybe it's the glitch at the beginning of Chair. Maybe it's that plucky sound that we had in the end of Chair. Maybe it's the harsh vocal layers that we have in here. Anything that creates a sound of tension, a sound that just isn't quite calming or beautiful or anything like that. They do a great job of having various levels of tension in their music. And some of that various leveling is going to be no tension, like we saw in Sword with the calmer sections. But most of it is balancing how much tension these sections have. Most of them have some sort of an anxious feeling to them. And that could be from the sound of the instrument. It could be from harmonics of playing specific chords to build into it. It could just be driving energy from a vocalist going from, spoken word into incorporating a scream every once in a while into screaming. That rising movement from something calmer into something aggressive has a feeling of rising tension to it. It's rising notes. There's so many sections in here where we just have a note that goes to the next note, that goes to the next note, and it just feels like it's climbing forever. I don't remember if it was Sword or Chair that had that, but yeah, it felt like water just rising, and it's just, you're not escaping it. It's just getting higher, and you have nowhere to go. And that feeling of rising tension appears all over the place. I mean, even that bubbling at the end of Sword with that low end sound coming around, that's tension. So it's just all over. This album is controlling how much tension and ensuring that the peaks of the songs are going to be the most tense, but also ensuring that the listener isn't too overwhelmed by the time you get there. The point is, after all, to tell a story, and if you lose somebody along the way of that story, they're not going to be able to experience the rest of it. And I think that's where the varying amounts of tension come from, of having different peaks and valleys without ever really ditching the tension entirely. This is supposed to be a heavy experience, but it's also supposed to be something that someone can get through. And I suppose that is more of a subjective take, because we have certainly listened to metal songs that are supposed to be aggressive and tense and overwhelming, and to me they are, but to some of you they're not. So the fact that this isn't overwhelming to me doesn't necessarily mean that the album is less overwhelming than any other extreme album about tension and anxiety and stuff like that. Anything that is supposed to be artistically weighty. Because a pop singer or a pop listener would probably find this to be quite overwhelming, even though I don't. So at this point, I'm glad I picked up on that, because I was about to move on to my next idea, but it is a subjective description I just went into there. The other thing they do fantastic kind of ties into that, which is dynamics. I suppose that growing and falling tension is one type of dynamic, but they do really well with layers and volume, emotional weight, different types of playing, whether it is faster, abrupt rhythmic stuff, texture stuff, chordal stuff. The vocals, we had clean vocals. We've had 2 or 3 types of harshes. We've definitely had fries in here. We have some sort of lower fry, maybe even like a hardcore shout in places. Like I said, we've also had spoken word against that. And Sword, I think, is a really good showcasing of quieter sections. I think it was like just the guitar playing like a quiet note, maybe light drumming, and then vocals, spoken word, screamed, and then the rising intensity, hitting like these big, massive moments and bringing it right back down to the quiet stuff. I mean, this is just phenomenal dynamic movement across some of these songs. And they've got such a control over that. So far, I don't think I've heard a single song that just feels static. And I hope we do get to that point as a bit of contrast itself, to at whatever point in the story they want to just hit a point where there is no release. Just hit that peak and hold on to it for a while. But so far, I'm really enjoying the dynamics between all of these songs. The short runtime's also helping with that. These songs feel like they've barely started by the time they're ending. So they're definitely doing something right as far as keeping attention of me, particularly. I can't speak for other people. But the contrast in the songs themselves, you never really hang on to anything too long. And a lot of it feels like it gives the song pacing and momentum and movement, rather than ever really staying in one place for too long. Which I think is interesting from a narrative perspective, too. If this continues to be about somebody who deals with mental health issues, having it feel like it's constantly evolving makes it feel like something you can't fight against. I don't know if that's something they're going for. Maybe I'll revisit that at the end of this analysis for the whole album, you know. But that would be an interesting direction to go on with this. Let's hit some lyrics for these two, and then we'll push into the middle of the album. I think the purpose of Sword is to begin to showcase the multiple sides of this character. There are parts that try to fix things. He says, I try to pull myself together, I take a breath and hold it, and then exhale, I'm in control. And if I wait, this feeling passes. I just have to hold on to it. But then there's others that talk down to this person. He says, you make an effigy and stick it full of pins so you'll remember that you're alone. You've made yourself into a martyr, and it feels good to fall on the sword. There's a part where it says, paranoid and nauseous. We've got him right where we want him. Keep it up. Tear his heart from his chest. Salvage what you can and make a run for it. But then it comes back to that original perspective. It says, I tried to dive in and put myself back together, but the pieces never fit. There is a part of him that's trying to be better, to weather these storms and come out the other side, at least in the same amount of pieces that they were already in. Maybe not necessarily bettering the situation, but staving off any more deterioration of the self. But there's others that really focus on bringing this person down, making them feeling anxious and paranoid, depressed, low self-esteem. I don't know if these are two negative voices versus the primary, or if it's just a collection of negative ideas versus the person. But I wonder if the variety of vocal deliveries aren't supposed to be understood as different characters. Because this is one thing that I bring up a lot in the past when it comes to concept albums, is anytime that we have a perspective shift, it usually isn't accompanied by a different vocalist or a different vocal style. You usually just have your vocalist in a group. You know, multiple vocalists is fairly uncommon in the world of rock and metal. And so I've always kind of, you know, I kind of treat it as if it's a musical. I want to follow along with the story. It's just really difficult when you have to read context clues to figure out who's saying what, especially since most music is lyrically kind of vague anyways, because there just isn't a lot of lyrical time. You know, you're trying to condense a story into 30 minutes, and how much of that is instrumental work? So you're really having to run to like a Cliff Notes version of the story and gather like the key points, and then use that lack of detail and still tell a story, and try to do that with shifting perspectives. And it's tough. It's something that you usually have to become quite familiar with in order to grasp what's going on. So I wonder if in this case, I actually do have that. The various vocal styles are supposed to be different perspectives of the self. I ran this back on Van. I looked at the lyrics on that one, and remember I had mentioned that there was a perspective shift. Some of the stanzas are written in first person with I, and the other ones have a you, or maybe an implied you, as if it was someone other than the narrator. And it didn't click with me. And I'm curious if we're going to see this continue throughout the album, or if maybe I'm just reading a little too much into this. But I do think that I am finding patterns that the I tends to be a little bit more positive or timid, whereas the you is more confident, but also diminishing, really trying to tear the narrator down. So I find that to be pretty interesting. But yeah, that's what this song is primarily about, though, is these two sides and trying to make it through the day while one's trying to tear you down, and you're really just trying to make it through as as unscathed as possible, not even trying to find time to make yourself better or to improve the self, but simply not to be beaten down anymore. And speaking about this, I think it's a really great line at the beginning. He says, "How can I feel so guarded and be totally defenseless?" To basically have your walls up at all times, blocking out everyone and kind of, separating yourself from the world, but also totally defenseless to the interior enemy. It's such a great line right there. Yeah, I like this song. Lyrically, I think it does a great job of continuing to solidify some of the ideas and patterns we've seen in the past couple of tracks, while, again, I think really cementing this idea and making it clear, if not previously, then at least by this point, that we're dealing with two different entities here. Chair is a song about someone dealing with suicidal thoughts. The beginning talks about seeing someone else who lost their life. It says, "I know the warning signs. I have ignored them in others, and I could have helped them, but never made an effort. They could have lived." But then it talks about something that burrows inside of their head, something that promises to end the pain. It's the same thing. This is what he's talking about. He says, "I know the warning signs, not because I've seen them in others. I experience them firsthand in myself, these thoughts that linger in your mind." He says, "I'm tired, but do I have a breath that's actually worth catching? I tally up the pros and cons to living and tally up the reasons not to cash in and die. I'll call it what it is, a cry for help. Chalk it up to cowardice if you want, but I know how you can get it." And it's basically just this person having these thoughts in their mind. It could be easy. It could take the pain away. All the things that make death sound alluring. It ends with sort of weighing things back and forth. It says, in the end, we either end things on our terms or don't. We end up in the same place, though. Why not? And that's where that track ends. Yeah, this album, it's exploring some dark things, but I think it's doing it with the gravitas that it requires. It's not trying to turn it into a spectacle. It's not performative depression. It is, I think, a really great showcasing of how this affects every moment of every day and why this can compound and weigh on somebody in a way that seems invisible to those around them. And that's only based off of 4 tracks. We still have 6 ahead of us. On the one hand, I think to myself, okay, we've already started to tread a little bit of similar ground here. Then and Sword are kind of the same. They explore them in different ways, enough variety to keep them separate. But how do we do 6 more songs worth of lyrics on this topic? I have faith they can do it, though. I'm interested to see where they move. And looking at some of these song titles, it didn't really make too much sense to me beforehand, but we have Ache, that's our next one, Drag, Pacifier, Always, Again. I think those 2 are going to be really interesting because I think for most people, you don't defeat depression, you just get through it. It's like alcoholism or any kind of addiction. You're always a recovering addict. You never defeat the addiction. It's just something you battle every day. So I think talking about the cycles at the end of this album, Always and Again, are kind of going to be leaning into the realities of the situation for most people who deal with mental health struggles like this. All right, next up though is Ache. Let's dive into it. That's a fast tempo. Oh, is that Morse code? I mean, it's also just a sick beat, but is it also Morse code? A little bit of a tempo shift and moving away from 3 into 4. Oh, there's another contrast element there. Halftime to full-time feels. Oh, the harmonic shift. Plus that vocal line, fantastic.
Is the only word that I seem to forget. Any lesson learned is lost in the process of living in. How many times will you allow me?
You know, this also feels very vulnerable.
Unintentional incisions bleed you dry of your time. Are you wasting your life with me? Pull out my eyes. Winding stairways leading to nothing, built upon something I thought would change. All I need is you. Please leave me here. I can't help it. I
Dude. Okay, so I think on its own, that's not a song that has a lot going for it. There's a lot of intensity at the beginning, and even that we build into it a little bit with that Morse code sound before it becomes the beat. I think there's a good 30 seconds before we even hit the verse. Which means as far as the heavy driving part of this track that fits the rest of this album goes, we really only get like a minute 15 out of that. And then it just dips down into this very light, almost soothing, very vulnerable section of the song. And that takes us to the very end of the track. It really is these two disparate ideas slammed together, and by itself without any other context, it's not a really great song. This is not a track I would suggest to somebody for a single song reaction. But this is fantastic for the album. We've had a couple of low points, but they've never really been really soft, with everything included. I mean, Sword had a couple of dips down, but it was light instrumentation with screaming. We still had that aggressive aspect to it. This, though, this is not that. We have both vocalists doing clean vocals here. One's texture, one's melody, and we have this very light guitar work, and it feels very floaty, but it also feels empty. It feels void. All the other guitar work on this album is very physical, very present. You can feel the sharpness of the attacks. You can feel the weight of the sound. This is very ethereal by contrast. Huge dynamic shift here in the overall atmosphere of this section. But it also feels ephemeral. And I think this is something that pops up a lot on this album, is the difference between something that feels real and something that doesn't. Something that feels like mist or fog that you can't hold on to. And I find that most of the heavy parts, the drearier parts, the more melancholic parts and darker sections all feel physical. Let me pull these lyrics up because I think this ties in really nicely. The first two tracks were about dreams, right? And where the dream life wasn't real, but was better. You couldn't feel it, you couldn't touch it, it wasn't tangible, but it was at least happiness. About the positive elements being fake. I think this also lines up, though, with the track Then, about how don't be hopeful about things because everything's subject to change, except the terrible things in life, those tend to not go away at all. About the solidity, that's not a word, is it? About how you can depend on the bad things. You can't depend on the good things, though. They're ephemeral. They might be there, they might not. You can't really expect it, but you can rely on, to lean on physically and figuratively on the negative things. It gives them physicality, it gives them presence, it gives them permanence in your life. And so for most of the sections of this album to feature a combination of light music and like foggy, misty, ephemeral sounds, I don't think that's an accident. I'm really curious what's going on in the lyrics here, but I do see this pattern. Anytime something good happens, or anytime there's any sort of positivity to the music, it's also light and airy and lacking physicality, lacking realness. That's an interesting pattern to pick up. I do have to look up I got to go back and listen to it and see if I can make out the Morse code of the beginning. It might not even be Morse code. It just sounds really close to it. So I want to see if there's anything being said there, but it does become a sick beat. And the vocals come in, and it's pretty much a sufferer track for the first minute or so. Interesting groove, aggression, power, strength, and loud. I do want to bring up one thing real quick, though, before we get into the lyrics. Vocals. There's something very raw about the vocals on this, and it comes from both vocalists in different styles. One vocalist, their harsh comes across as very powerful. There's a lot of lower end elements to it. I don't think it's guttural. I think it's just a low fry. But it is wide, it is massive, it fills a lot of space, it feels dense. This is something I would have to give a second listen, probably with the lyrics up to kind of go through this, but I'm curious if this vocalist tends to say the more negative elements of the music, which is a way of allowing, as I was mentioning earlier, the negative parts of the music being more solid, being wider, denser, more physical. These vocals, I think, would also lean into that. The other harsh vocal, though, tends to be a bit more nasally. It tends to feel a bit thinner. It tends to cut through a little bit, but also lacks the physicality, the presence, the size. It's thinner, it's smaller. This provides really nice back and forth between the two of them. Once again, contrast dynamics, but it also allows the two of them to feel vulnerable in different ways. One is a cry for help, the other is a vie for power, trying to put up a front that things are better than they are, which a lot of this song or a lot of this album has been about masking, about trying to look fine and presentable, like nothing's wrong on the surface, even though you have voices within telling you that everyone knows. You're not fooling anyone. What are you, stupid? And I think having the vocals, and then of course the clean vocals too, coming in and just being vulnerable by getting rid of the compression on top, not hiding behind the grit anymore, and just your natural voice, but it also coming through airy and low energy. Definitely a bit on the quieter side too. There's a timidness to it. And I would say even a reluctance of, not a reluctance of, a lack of confidence to it. It feels timid and small. And I think that works well at describing our character. At least the way they perceive themselves. It's their lack of self-esteem all over again, presented in yet another way. So I love the vocal dynamics between all three of them, or I guess all four of them. We have 2 cleans and 2 harshes. But I also love how they all help represent a different aspect of our narrator. And something that clicked with me on this track is the 2 vocal styles, a more of a traditional hardcore sound and more of a narrower post-hardcore sound as far as the harshes are concerned. It reminded me of a band called Cryptodira, who also have this duality in their 2 vocalists. And I've only ever heard the one album from them. Dang, I wish I could remember. It's a good album though. 2021, I think, is when it came out. And one of the things I really liked about it is the duality of their vocals and how they represent 2 different elements in the music. Oh, it was 2020. It was called The Angel of History. I also see they've released a few 2025 singles, so I got a little bit of digging into. I have music to listen to this weekend. Some new singles from a favorite band. That's good stuff. I love making those connections. I'm like, hey, is there anything new? Yeah, dude, I haven't thought about them in a while, and I'm glad there is new stuff to check out. But yeah, if you enjoy this, it's a different kind of hardcore. It's still post-hardcore, but closer to the hardcore side. It's a bit noisier and a bit more raw than what we have in this album. But if you're enjoying this album, definitely check out Cryptodira. They're fantastic. And I think that's about it for this song. So let's hit some lyrics. This might be one of the hardest songs lyrically to get through on the album thus far. It's about, presumably, still our narrator, although now that I think about it, I think most of these songs can be vignettes of anyone's lives. While I think it would be interesting to make an entire album based off of a single person, I also think that most of the songs we've experienced so far lyrically don't have to be defined by a single person. They're vague enough that they really could apply to anyone. This could be a series of 10 different people who all suffer from mental health complications. And it looks similar to a lot of people. I mean, that's what we saw on, was it the last track? Chair? And the very beginning of it said, I know the warning signs. I've lived through them. I mean, that's the whole point here, is that if we could just reach out to others, we could really help support people. It wouldn't be an absolute perfect fix to everything, but just a little bit of a support network for those around us would help a lot. Because most of our demons come from within. So I think I'm going to continue to talk about this album as if it is a single person, because so far that's been pretty well done. But honestly, I think the way that the mental health is portrayed throughout this album, it could be easily read that every single song is about a different person, all suffering from very similar issues. But this one, like I said, is one of the hardest that I've had to get through so far. It is about someone who is in a relationship and the other person is their emotional rock, their emotional support, helps them get through the hard times, but they feel bad because of that. Right at the beginning, says, "Do you see it on her face? The resentment every time you shook her out of her sleep, every time you pushed and begged her to end it." Says, "Stay with me. I'm sorry this happened and thank you for giving me time. I know that I'm leeching you dry, but will you still carry me? I sense it, the increased distance. I can sense the exit plan that you're forming. I fear that I've turned you to ice. I no longer sense your warmth. But stay with me till all of this is gone. You're my shelter from storms that no one can see." It's this mix of feeling like a burden on this person, but knowing that they've helped you through so much. Maybe the other person does start to resent you. Maybe you do feel like a burden on them, but I think more often than not, you don't. People who stick around and help people through hard times like this usually do so because they care about the person. There's sympathy or maybe even empathy going on. It's a tough job being someone's emotional rock, especially when they can't be yours. It's not really a reciprocal relationship here, but that's not the purpose of it. Friendship, companionship, this is not transactional. More often than not, the person that's your support system, they're not going to leave you just because of this one thing. They love you, they enjoy your company, they're here for you. But having that duality within, feeling like you're a weight on someone else's life, like you're hanging, you're weighing them down, holding them back, that's very common. And as usual, it's those voices within, once again, telling you to shut yourself off from the world, close yourself in a door. You have no place outside of your house, outside of your room, outside of your living quarters. Lock yourself away. And that allows them to have more power over you, the voices, the negative thoughts. This lines up very well with track 2, I think it was, where the voices were telling him to, lock himself away. Don't try to connect with anyone else. And this entire song is just this back and forth. Please help me. Also, will you leave me? Why haven't you left me? What benefit do I have in your life? But please don't go. Help me through this. It's really heartbreaking to listen to the lyrics, to read them in this case, but I'll definitely give this album a second spin afterwards and I'll have the lyrics up. Even at one point though, saying, "How many times will you allow me to cut you down? Unintentional incisions bleeding you dry of your time. Are you wasting your life with me? All I need is you. Please leave me here." Yeah, dude, this is a heavy track. And I think that vulnerability there is almost an element of loneliness too. The back half of this song focusing on an emptiness of space. Like I mentioned, a lack of physicality. You have your atmosphere and your vocals, and that's it. There's a lot of room left over. Room that was once filled. Now, granted, I think more thematically, I would read this as an internalization of thoughts. You don't need those heavy, aggressive, screamed vocals to be your negative voice when you yourself are repeating exactly what they say. So they can be missing, leaving this empty room, but it's also a song about telling your one support structure to go, to leave you in a place of loneliness and isolation. And I think having the music focus on empty space is a really great job of showcasing where this person feels they're going to end up eventually. All right, next up we have Drag. Let's see what's going on with this one. Oh. Oh, I never looked up I gotta look up the Morse code next lyric break. Very short cycles from the drums, from the guitars. Okay, so we're in 7. Very dissonant, tense chords coming from the guitar. That section was in 9. Most of this album's been 3 and 4, so hearing these 7 and 9 sections are interesting. I mean, the song is called Drag. It's being dragged down here. All right, this is a short one. I don't know that I have much to bring up here. I mean, we had a 30-second intro and then a minute and a half outro. Once we hit that that section, I mean, that took up the final half of the track, it started out muffled and then I got opened up and then we had the vocals come in and then we slowed it down and made it feel like it was dripping. So, I mean, a lot of that was musically identical, just production wise, changing up the sound of it. Speaking of sound, album art. It looks like possibly a sun, but with the halo around the black circle at the top, it almost seems like some sort of eclipse, possibly with light coming around a moon. But it's also dripping, draining onto a puddle. This could be, and it's also looks very tendrily, very I don't know what you would you call it, but it also resembles a microphone. Now maybe that's totally unintentional. After all, it is just a shaft with a ball on the top of it. It's not like a microphone has a very defined, unique shape. But I'm curious if this album art isn't supposed to represent some sort of bringing a microphone to and documenting the thoughts of someone who deals with this sort of depression, of having these mental health issues. And as a lot of this album has stated, it's sort of invisible, something within the world of the individual that's just not presented, whether because they think that it's not something they should put a weight on other people, or maybe it's just not socially acceptable to do so. They feel like it needs to be kept within, to hide it. And this album is a way of saying, look, this exists within people. It exists within a lot of people. We're going to put it on a microphone. We're going to blast this out in speakers. You're going to see this invisible side of this. So, like I said, I don't know if that's intentional, but I just caught some of that in my mind while listening to that track. I'm curious what other people think about it. Now, I think the big draw on this one, as the first half is a lot of what we've heard previously: harsh vocals, aggressive riffage, and tense harmonic work. There are some really interesting time signature things in here. We have a part that's in 7/4, we have a part that's in 9/4. Like I mentioned during the reaction, we've had 3-beat bars before, we've had 4-beat bars before. They are pretty typical across most Western genres, but 7 and 9 are a bit less normal. And they are totally new, I think, on the album. So I'm kind of curious what they're supposed to represent, because the 7, I think, makes sense to me. It feels like it's 8 but missing a beat. It really feels like we're being thrown into that next bar, we're tripping into it. But 9, I don't know. I didn't really pick up anything in the 9 thematically. It could just be that the riff they had built only works in 9 because of the way they wanted the groove to be. But usually with 9, it's going to feel like an extension of 8, usually, and 8 is just 2 bars of 4. So it'll feel like you have a bar of 4, a bar of 4, and then a bar of 1. This little extra piece added in at the end of the phrase feels just a tad bit longer than you would be expecting. But it doesn't really do that. Like I said, it flows rather nicely. It was only because of the odd rhythmic ideas, because we were working with groups of 3s and then not 3s underneath it, because we were jumping between low notes and high notes. And I just got curious. It wasn't like I immediately noticed the time signature was odd. I just noticed that the phrasing of the rhythms was a little different. I was like, oh, are we in 4/4 with just a really neat rhythm? No, we're not. We're in 9/4. Alternating 4 and 5 is probably how I'd write that, rather than that 4/4/1 I described. But I think that's a really great way of visualizing the extension. But the 7 certainly feels like 8 missing a beat. If we had that one beat there, it would have just flowed nicely, but it doesn't, and we sort of trip into it. And I think missing something coming off of a track like Ache might make sense. We got to get into the lyrics for this track and kind of see what they're doing with it, but track 5 was all about, I have someone in my life, I'm pushing them out of it. And so track 6 might very well be about being alone again and having that part that made you feel a bit more complete missing. But like I said, I don't have any read like that on the 9. It worked. I don't know what to add to it, but it is interesting to see that they went to new time signatures both on this track. It wasn't like one track was a 7, another was a 9. Like, this is so far the weird meter song on the album. So that's interesting. The other thing I want to bring up is something that's a bit more widespread on the album. It ties into their way of building tension. Something I've heard a couple of times is a palm muted technique, which is just a way to use your palm and have it rest on the strings. So when you strum, you get the notes, but it's immediately, the vibrations of the string are immediately stopped. And it just kind of comes off a bit chirpy. It's just a very abrupt, short sound. And they actually use that really well, usually to introduce an idea. They'll start a new riff with palm muting, so it's short and abrupt. And then after doing that, 4 times, they'll pull their palm off the string, play the same riff, but allowing the strings to ring out, really getting the big full sound out of it. And this is just a great way to build tension, as you can feel the other part of the sound missing. We're going to get into it. We're just not there yet. It's kind of similar to the way that we used, production in order to shave off parts of a sound and then fill them in later. We've done that on a couple of tracks. This is just more of a performance side of a similar effect. But I mean, this is just, you can hear the palm muted technique on so many tracks here. And like I said, it's just a great way to omit sonic information that you'll fill in later so that you can, it works really well as a transition, like I said, to set up a new riff and then play it fully 4 bars later, after one repetition. And it gives the vocalist maybe time to come down in energy, say a couple of words, and then explode into the next section, which is actually a common transition on this entire album. And while I do feel like it is generally pretty standard for post-hardcore as a whole, I think they're doing a great job of using a genre trope in order to tell the story here. Because, sure, sometimes you might be doing okay and these negative thoughts are going to slowly swell under you and you're going to feel it coming on. You're going to have, a bad episode soon, as far as, your feelings, your negativity, voices coming in. But, they can sneak up on you too. You think you're having a good time and then just bam, your whole day flips upside down. So I think it's one of the ways that having these explosive moments works really well at telling this story of someone who battles, these demons within them. Metaphorically, of course, not literal demons. Let's hit some lyrics on this, and then we're going to move into the long song, which is only 6 minutes, but it is still by and far away the longest one on this album, sitting about 2 hours longer than the average. 2 hours. Twice as long as the average. All right, lyrics. All right, Drag has a pretty straightforward premise, lyrically at least. It's about the darker side of him, the voice that has all of the negative opinions and stuff like that. Basically ensuring that there's nowhere for his normal self or his positive self or any sort of, neutral self to hide. It says, drag him from his bed, string him up, keep him blind, keep him feeling with his nerves on fire. He counts down 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ready or not, where will you run? I will burn every hiding spot and leave no stone unturned. Basically just making sure that this person is in constant distress and that they understand just how weak and helpless they are to these darker impulses and thoughts. At one point, even saying, let no shred of sanity remain. Yeah. That's a powerful one right there. And I think it's the first song that doesn't feature both perspectives. It is completely told from the other side, the darker side. And there's just absolutely 0 points where there is a first person perspective to it. And then just talking about how unrelenting it is. Yeah, I think that's a really good way of characterizing those voices. And basically giving them an I am song in a musical sense. The I am is the song that describes who you are. It's usually given to villains since they have less screen time. You get less information from their actions. They have to literally tell you who they are. Whereas the main character you'll spend more time with, and so you'll be able to see who they are through their actions. They tend to get I want songs, which allows them to wax poetically about the shortcomings in their life, what they would like to see out of it, and what they would like to gain, and changes they'd like to make to their life. Sticking with something semi-relevant, I guess this would be Moana's song where she talks about wanting to sail the ocean. We get to see her growing up on the island. We get to see who she is, the adventurous, sort of tomboyish character, lots of running around and getting dirty and all this, but she has this want to go out, and you can't show that because it's something that she literally can't do right now. Her tribe forbids it. So she gets to tell it in song. That's the I want track. So this being the villain of the story, in a sense, getting the I am song is actually pretty traditional. I don't get to talk about musical theory, I suppose. That's not a thing. Musical theory would be like music theory. But the compositional techniques in musicals too often on a rock and metal channel. All right, we're going to push forward into the long one, Nocturne. 6 minutes, let's dive in. I assume this is probably going to be the peak of the album as far as weight, dreariness, depressive lyrics. We are reaching the final third of the album after all, but it's also Nocturne. This would be darkness. Rain, a bit cliche, but really the acoustic guitar really pushing into these more dreary sounds. And especially with Drag being as intense as it was lyrically. Yeah, we're definitely reaching a peak, and a song called Nocturne sounds like a good place to put the darkest moment of the album.
Look at you, lying there looking so beautifully.
Interesting harmonies on that vocal part.
Cause I don't wanna move.
It's so haunting.
Anything at all. I just wanna be here with you. We'll fall into the grooves, to the place where we can be anything at all. I'll never not be right here with you. I yearn for you. Let's subdue. Cause I don't wanna move. I don't wanna do anything at all. I just wanna be here with you.
It's interesting, there are darker harmonic twists in the chord progression.
Place where we can be anything at all. I'll never
There is also a comfort to all of this too. I'm curious what the lyrical angle is going to be on this. Especially since we're halfway over. Is this just going to be a ballad straight through? Oh, dude. The diegetic rain, it isn't just a sample, it is referenced in the music. I like how the rain almost felt comforting at the beginning, but it's really becoming overwhelming, drowning out the vocals. It's a rising volume. Okay. So, I think it's a bit ironic that the longest song on the album is going to be the one I talk about the least. There just isn't a lot of musicality to this. This is a song that tells a story through sonic storytelling, sonic narrative writing, more so than composition. Also, apparently I never paused. The next track started, didn't it? I was so ready to talk about this. I just forgot to hit the pause button. Anyways, we have the chord progression on the acoustic guitar. This comes in pretty early, and I think it lines up the emotion here. It's lonely, it's haunting, it's melancholic, but it's comfortable. There's a safety to it. I think this whole song is about that. It'll be really interesting to get into the lyrics. I picked up, there's a lot of repetition from what I could tell, but I picked up, I hope you never leave me, or I'll never leave you, and listen to the rain, right? So there's a centering and a fixation. And I think they're two separate, they're always presented by two different voices. I think the ones that are about the fixation are always the higher pitched vocalist. So that'll be interesting to dive into when we get to the lyrics. I hope that that's layered out in a way, italics or parentheses, something for me to kind of gauge what's going on there. But I mean, that's it. You get this calm, melancholic safety, comfort from the guitars. You get the rain, starts out quiet, rises over the course of the song, We get thunder added to it eventually. This overshadows and swallows up the vocals and the guitar. Like I mentioned at the end, it sounded comforting. I like the sound of rain. I'm a huge fan of rain. And I found that to be a rather soothing sound at the beginning of the song, but it quickly swallows everything up, just completely becoming an overcompassing force against the vocals. So it almost feels like that's being swallowed up. And that's it. We get the thunder and the second vocals at the end, and that's the entire song right there. I mean, the idea of a comfortable depression or a comfortable melancholy, that's it. I have nothing else to say about this one. So let's hit some lyrics then, because like I said, I'm kind of curious what's going on with this one. Lyrically, I'm getting two very different ideas, but that's actually pretty consistent on this album, as I still think there are multiple perspectives on it. So yeah, let's dive into that. All right, so I was looking at the lyrics and I started thinking about the music and the vocals, and I was like, okay, I gotta go figure out who this group is. And usually I do this around the middle. This is pretty late into the album. I'm so enthused with the music that I haven't gone and checked out any additional context. The reason I think why there's only one album from this is because they're a super group. And frequently super groups will come together, release an album, and that's it. They go back to their main projects or whatever. There are very few super groups who consistently come back together to put music out. And yeah, I think even rarer to find supergroups that are the same lineup release after release. So we have the vocalist. Well, I don't know if they play these instruments in their respective bands, but we have three vocalists in this band. Forrest Wright of the band A Perception, Corey Lockwood of the band A Lot Like Birds, and Shane Gann of the band Hail the Sun. I knew he also does guitar here, and I knew I felt that blueprint here. Now, that's not to say that maybe they still haven't been influenced by the Mars Volta, because I feel like a lot of Hail the Sun has been influenced by Mars Volta, but there's two guitarists in that. So their influences can come from different areas. But at least here, like I felt it. These later songs, as they reach more of a noisier sound overall, I'm hearing less of it. But those opening three tracks, the guitar work, man, it feels so much like listening to Hail the Sun with a very different band around the guitar. But then we also have Blake Dollinger on drums here from I the Mighty. What I find interesting is that there's three vocalists, a drummer, and a guitar. I can't say I've heard a lot of bass work in here at all. I don't think I've brought it up today at all. But it doesn't look like there's a bassist. Again, I don't know if these roles are for their placement in this band or the roles they play in other bands. Although Shane, I don't think Shane's ever done vocals for Hail the Sun. So I'm thinking that it's just for this band, which means there's no bass in this band. That's interesting. But anyways, the Hail the Sun connection. That's mostly why I brought this up, because honestly, I can't really find much else about this other than the fact that this album is specifically dealing with mentally taxing mental health issues like anxiety and depression. And I think that they're doing a fantastic job at showcasing this artistically. And like I said, with the gravitas it's required. It's not, it's not the mall emo kind of depression where it's just kind of a flavor on top of the song. Like everything around this album is built around treating this with the respect and authenticity that this concept deserves. It needs to be spoken about. And I think it says here that the band had an idea of shedding light on mental illness. and that 35% of any revenue that this album makes is donated to the Anxiety and Depression Association of America. So I really do think that the album art is supposed to, in a sense, resemble a microphone. It is amplifying all of this to a larger audience. I kind of wish then that they had more listeners. Again, that 16,000 monthly listener on Spotify, it's not terrible. I mean, 16,000 is still a lot of people every month. But it's still not, the millions or billions that some of the biggest bands, even in post-hardcore, are hitting. So I feel like this album kind of flew under the radar despite being a super group, despite being phenomenal. I really have no complaints about this album at all. This is so far an easy 10 out of 10 album for me. On to the lyrics for this one, though. It's kind of vague. There is an I and a you, but they're working together instead of being antagonists as they have been this entire album. The only other time that an I and a you has been even remotely positively spoken about was in Ache, whatever the song was about feeling like a drain on your partner's life, and viewing them positively. It was Ache. Viewing them positively, saying, I need you in my life. You're such a light in it, and I need that. But also, it did have the negative side of feeling like this weight around that person's neck. But this whole song kind of has this positive interlinking element to it. It says, "Oh, look at you, lying there, so beautifully. My image of eternity, I yearn for you. Because I don't want to move. I don't want to do anything at all. I just want to be here with you. We fall into the grooves, to the place where we can be anything at all. I'll never not be right here with you." It's that fixation. You make everything great. We work so well together. Why would I go anywhere else? The simple phrase of "I yearn for you." It's just such a powerful element. But there is the second vocals that come in. "Don't you ever leave, 'cause I'll never leave you." And then the end of the song is that up against "Listen to the rain, let the rain fall." There is a darker element to this for sure. The fixation, the addiction to this other. But it also doesn't feel as... There's a dependency here. But it isn't that I'm dependent on you, but I recognize I'm dependent on you and I feel like that's bad for you. Like, that component's not there. I wonder if this isn't a dependency on the depression, on those negative voices, that if they were ever to leave and your mind would just be silent, that's actually somehow more terrifying. And so, like I said, it's vague. I don't actually know who the two are, the I and the you here. But it doesn't feel the same way that Ache did. And that makes me think it's a different perspective. And my gut says it's a relationship to the negative thoughts. As much as you hate them, it's also comfortable to have them. They've been there your whole life, as long as you can remember. This depression's been untreated. If that changed, what would happen? What would life even be? That's scary, man. Change is scary. And I like how they left this in here with the ambiguous element to it. Ambiguity, that's the word I wanted. Had the emphasis all wrong. That's what threw me off. You don't know who they're talking to, though. Kind of leaves it up to the listener to decide what they think the song is about then. We only have two more groups to move through then. We have Pacifier and Always, which sits about 7 minutes, and then the final song called Again. Let's dive into this group right here. So pretty much this entire chord progression is tense, but we have 2 descending and 2 ascending. It's a cycle. That was definitely a bass there, wasn't it? And we did hear bass earlier as well during one of the lulls. So there is somebody playing the bass. The phrasing's interesting on this because we do have a 3/4, but it's in flux. Dude, that run up coming into this section. An interesting section.
All the talking, all the effort, nothing worked, nothing's better. All the pills, all the liquor, meant to close my wounds, tore them open and let me forget.
The stretching out of time.
It's hard to swallow and it never ends. Full of one medicine, but always on empty. It's always fighting and it always wins. I give it up, but it's relentlessly kicking. I've been told to go. I've been told to go.
Oh, it's actually 4/4. Yeah, if you count each of those take, get, you're gonna get 16 per phrase. And they're 8 notes, so it's in 8 beats. I like the cymbal work over here. Yeah, pretty straightforward song focusing around a single rhythmic device. Really focusing on weight though. There's a lot of sections that don't really move into a double time. It just sticks with a slower idea. I mean, this one feels like it's moving a lot faster. Even though the tempo isn't different, it just has that momentum.
And after all is said and done, I know the problem's internal. I know the symptoms like their family, and I can't fend them off. But I'm learning to outlast and stand in. Each time gets better, and it feels like they're all losing their grip. You can't just cover this up.
Oh.
It knows you down to the cell. It's left to
A little bit of a pop punk chorus here. Those really syncopated beginnings. In fact, this whole song is rather... Oh, the harmony. This whole song is rather syncopated though. It's very bouncy like some of the earlier tracks.
It's getting simple. I've got the reins in my hand. It's never quite gone, but not too strong to withstand. And when I hold
chords over here all the time.
It's not to drown in a void, it's just a way to see clear. You can't just cover this up, it knocks you down to the sound. It's left a mark on your tongue, can you taste it? There is a permanence here, as much as knowing it hurts. It's not what all of us want, when this is coming to terms.
Yeah, dude, prominent bass there. Dude, that's harsh.
You can't just cover this up, it knocks you down to the sound. It's left a mark on your tongue, can you taste it? There is a permanence here, as much as knowing it hurts. It's not what all of us want, when this is coming to terms.
Ooh, a little jazzy with that progression. Dang. That's so good. That's so good. That's kind of tying like my favorite song so far. I mean, there's only one left. Yeah, that's just a solid track right there. So again, after, when we were transitioning between Pacifier and Always, I had mentioned that Pacifier is kind of just a single idea. I don't really have a lot to bring to this. I mean, we have the energy of it. We have the screaming and the dual vocal work. And we do have the interesting phrasing going on here too, which is just taking the 16 half beats that are going to make up 2 bars of 4. So we have 8 beats total, and we're doing 2 hits per beat. So that's our 16. And we break it up into, what is it, like 3, 3, 3, 3, 4. So it kind of feels like a 5-bar phrase with an extension on that final bar. That felt a little interesting, and it took me a second to grasp what was going on there, but that's just 4/4 for you. So again, like I said, this whole album's been either groups of 3 or groups of 4. And this was a fun mix where we had groups of 3 in phrases of 4. And that makes, drag stand out a little bit, having the 7 and the 9 in that. But we have this very rigid rhythmic device in this groupings of 3 here, and that pretty much dominates the entire track. It is very rhythmically focused. We have some interesting moving guitar ideas, and we do have the cyclical chord that is continuously tense and anxious. It's every single one of them is unresolved, pointing towards a resolution, and where we go isn't resolved, and it points towards a resolution, and then we go somewhere else that isn't resolved and points towards resolution. And it's this cycle of tension, of anxiety, of never really finding home, in a sense, in a harmonic sense. So I think that's interesting. I haven't touched on that at all on this album, and I wonder if that's a bit more common than I expect. But because of songs like Always, which have a lot of driving parts to it, where maybe the harmonic qualities aren't as obvious, because instead of playing, just strumming full chords, we are moving through riffs. And the riffs tend to be pretty quick on this album. So maybe if I could take the riffs, find out what chord they are, and just play the chords underneath the riffs, I might be able to find that there's actually more cyclical writing throughout this album than I am picking up on this first listen. But certainly in Pacifier, the whole harmonic element is just a cycle of tension, hoping that the next step leads you somewhere more comfortable. It never does, though. Some are more tense, some are less tense, but we never hit that full resolution that every single chord wants. That stability from the unstable. So that's kind of a neat idea there. But, other than that and the rhythmic device, that's just another pretty straightforward post-hardcore track with a heavy emphasis on sound and weight and size of things. That takes us to Always, though. This was a bit of a nice change of pace. The chorus here is super freaking catchy, dude. I love it. Lots of syncopated attacks in the middle of the entire phrase as a whole. Chords, as we shift, they're not on downbeats. They're on the ands of beats, the point between two beats. And that's what gives it some of that like upbeat energy, and especially as we come in early on that. So we'll come in on the and of 4 rather than the downbeat of 1. So we're actually going to hang on to that chord through the last half of 4 into the entirety of 1. And it kind of feels like time is frozen a little bit, where we're at the peak of a jump. We haven't quite started to fall yet. We still have that upward momentum, but we're not going up yet either. We're just kind of hovering here for a moment. And listening to the rest of the chord progression, you kind of have an idea of how long we should be in each chord. And this one just feels a little longer. Of course, that's because we jumped into it a little early. But it allows for this free-floating feeling before crashing back down to continue the progression. It's also driving. There's a ton of intensity and forward momentum to it. This song doesn't really let up. We have more of that aggressive sound in the verses, lots of fast-moving riffs and tension. I don't remember if it was the bridge or the second verse. I had mentioned that the guitar over here on the right was just like a series of tense dyads, just like as gnarly of a sound as they can make, just leaning into it, getting more and more tense on each chord into the progression. So still working within rhythm and weight and physicality and momentum and direction and speed and all of this that they've really been working with in this whole album. But then we get to this chorus and it's still driving, but it feels brighter, bouncier, and fun. I don't know why. I'm kind of hoping that our character is finding peace of some sort. We've kind of seen them find the comfort, presumably in Nocturne. And it's not a positive comfort, but it is something that's a little less than the pure anxiety and depression of the rest of this album. So, I don't know. Maybe it's that Pacifier or one of those. I don't pick up a lot of lyrics. And so the lyrics I did pick up are kind of getting mixed between the two. I don't know when I heard these phrases, but there's definitely a line about medication in one of those. And I wonder if that's what Always is about. These bouncier, faster, funner choruses are maybe when on the medication. Still not perfect. Life still seems like it's careening forward, but the dark elements just aren't there as much. We don't have the screams. We don't have the voices putting us down. And then the verses might be another medication, or might be when you're off the medication. Maybe that's what that duality is supposed to represent. We'll get into that when we hit the lyrics. But just every bit of this song is just driving forward. And it is a blast to listen to because the syncopated elements aren't just in the chorus, although I think that is the funnest, bounciest section, but they're throughout the verses and bridges as well. They can introduce tense dyads and gnarly harmonies, but the rhythms themselves, even in the faster moving guitar riffs, dude, they're still syncopated. You're still hitting these notes on offbeats, creating this fun vibe. And it feels a little bouncy, sure. It's a little rough if you're not used to this rhythm. But I mean, me, like I said, kind of gave me some pop punk vibes. And the chorus, I'm right at home here. And maybe having all of these jumps are going to feel a little alienating if you only listen to metal, especially extreme metal, your hardcore death metal, doom, black metal, stuff that really focuses on rigidity of sound and a lack of, or maybe a diminished focus on rhythmic syncopation. This might feel very jagged to you. So again, experience is going to play a big role into how you feel about most of these songs, and that's true with all music, of course. But to me, this is just a very fun song. I'm right at home on most of this, and I'm just enjoying the bounciness, the rhythmic things, the largeness of the bass. I am very curious who plays the bass. I'm going to see if I can do a little bit more digging, maybe a Wikipedia page. I didn't even think about Genius. I went straight to searching because I looked at Genius's band page and I didn't see like names of people or instruments. I was like, not there. Let's find somewhere else. But I didn't even look at what was posted there. There was definitely a paragraph. Normally I'd go to Metal Archives, but this is not metal, so that's not gonna do me any good. I'm gonna see what I can find though. There's definitely a bass on here, and this one article doesn't mention a bassist at all. The bass was huge here though. They do get overshadowed. I'm listening for it, and I still have a hard time hearing it. A lot of the time it's just playing root tone stuff with the bass kicks, so it kind of gets grouped into that lower end sound in general. But there's been 2 or 3 times on the album when it's had a chance to shine, and it sounds great. And there's a really cool moving, I'm going to assume, tapped bass line in, I think it was the bridge on Always here, but it might have been the bridge on Pacifier. The two songs are starting to bleed together in my memory a little bit. But yeah, that bass lick sounded great. Lots of movement to it, lots of dexterity. I mean, it could have been one-handed too, but I'm thinking it was two-hand tapping, which is impressive. So yeah, this is a really big driving moment to the finale. Nocturne was a low, and we're just ramping energy back up. I'm curious how they're going to finish this. But let's check out some lyrics first. All right. Real quick before we head into some lyrics, and the next one's a doozy, I'll tell you that. I really thought we had got through some of the most difficult ones, but Pacifier, the title makes perfect sense knowing what they're singing about. But before we get into that, I did find an AMA or an Ask Me Anything on Reddit where the band answered questions, and they described themselves as pretty much the same instrumental breakdown that I read from an earlier article. 1 guitar, 3 vocalists, and a drummer. Except, well, there's still no bass here. I'm going to assume that the Hail the Sun guitarist also plays bass. That's the only thing that makes sense to me since they refuse to list a bassist. Although, I wonder too, if maybe they're just using a pitch shifter, playing the guitar, but dropping the pitch down an octave. That's a possibility too. But anyways, instead of just writing vocals, they wrote down their roles. This was something I assumed earlier, but I hadn't quite figured out. And there's actually 3. I noted that there's 2 harshes and a clean, but I assumed the 2 harshes represented the same thing. But we have the voice of the sufferer. I'm going to assume that's the cleans in here. We have the voice of anxiety and the voice of depression. I'm going to assume those are the harshes. I would love to get an official breakdown, the lyrics with who sings what part, because Genius hasn't supplied me with that at all. It's just been the lyrics straightforward. Some of them will have things in parentheses or italics to showcase that it is being sung alongside another line, but there is no consistent formatting going on that I can read into who's singing what and how that might allow me to perceive things. This changes everything though, because I've read the entire album through 2 perspectives, but it seems that I need to read it through 3. So that's interesting. That's about it. I don't know where I was going with that. I did see though that they were asked if they were going to make more music together, and they said they would like to, but they wanted to leave the supergroup aspect out of it. That this project is not about the group coming together and making music. It's about mental health. You know, they're donating part of the proceeds towards that mental health group. So as far as I can tell, this is just it. They might come together under another name, or, I mean, it's been almost a decade. Maybe they have come together under another name, but this appears to be the only thing Sufferer will ever put out, because they really want the focus to be on the context of the arts and the theming and the topic of it all, more so than the fact that it is a supergroup, that these people are coming together, that they'll have another album. I think there's a lot of artistic integrity in that. I think that's quite admirable. And a pretty cool thing. You just don't see that too often. You know, usually it's, you know, our schedules don't line up, so we might not put another one out. They're like, no, dude, this art needs to stand by itself. It's not going to be part of a catalog or part of a discography. It's like, this is it. I can really appreciate that angle on it. Now, as I said, lyrically, Pacifier is a bit of a doozy. It is about all of the medication, doctor prescribed and self-prescribed, that someone might go through to attempt to alleviate these issues. This hits really close to me. Not because I've been through this, but because I've had someone really close to me go through this. Talks about people saying, hey, you should try therapy. Just get out of your house more. Change your sleep schedule. Schedule a doctor's appointment, man. They got pills. They help really well. Someone else saying, dude, and maybe even at this point, it might be a little bit of the voices in the head too, the voice of anxiety or depression. How about you mix those pills with some whiskey? How about you try harming yourself? That'll give you some control. Just lock all the doors. Tell your friends to go away because we're trying to cope. It really feels like this is supposed to be a natural progression of people with honest, if not misguided, recommendations on how to help with this, and that being translated into, I have a problem, I need to fix it, and the voices running with that and really distorting it and pushing it to these extremes that, of course, are going to direct towards self-harm and suicide. But of course, they've tried all of this already, and that's the real big twist. It says all the talking and all the effort, but nothing's ever worked. Nothing gets better. All the pills, all the liquid, all it did was tear me open and leave me for dead. It says it's hard to swallow, and it never ends. I'm full up on medicine, but somehow always empty. It's just always fighting, and it always wins. I've given up, but it still relentlessly kicks me. It says we've exhausted our options, took all the advice that was offered, we've medicated and meditated and chemically altered our heads, but it's always fighting and it always wins, and we are sedated at best. And that's the part that really hits me, is the way that all of these pills can completely change someone. And I have witnessed this. Someone I really cared about just becoming sedated. That's really the best word for it. And so I'm just reading these lyrics and I'm like, dude, all these songs I think do a really great job at describing different phases and elements and feelings of depression. This one in particular, though, it really hits close to home for me. And of course, the final line is, why try to deal with all of this when you can just remove it and trade it for rest? Of course, bringing it all right back to suicide. You could easily not have to deal with this, and just having that at the back of your mind. Was it Pacifier or Always? I think it was Pacifier with the cyclical Chord progression, always tense, never finding rest. Feels like it's always taking that next step, but it never leads anywhere. If it was Pacifier, and I'm like 80% sure it was, this idea of keep trying new things, meditate, new type of medication, get out of the house, try this other kind of meditation. What about some alcohol? Try this other medication. It's like you're always trying to find that thing, that home, that resolution, that comfort. Doesn't matter how many steps you take, though, none of it works. Now, of course, this isn't to say that medication or even home remedies don't help anyone. I don't think that's what this song is saying, but this is definitely one of the more extreme cases where all the currently available things just don't work. And if they do work, again, it's this massive trade-off. You become sedated more than anything else. You kind of lose your life in a different way. So yeah, that's it's one of the more powerful tracks, I think, lyrically on this album. And you'll recall for Always, I had mentioned that there's a positivity to it. I didn't quite understand what the positivity would be, and I was actually totally misdirected in thinking it was about medication. But it is a drastically different feeling than the verse, which tends to be heavier and more antagonistic. This actually seems to be set up perfectly. The song is about learning to deal with it. Not necessarily finding a way to push it out of the way, but just to try to get through the day. The verse 1 says, after all is said and done, I know the problem is internal. I know the symptoms like they're family and I can't fend them off, but I'm learning to outlast and stand it. Each time gets better and it feels like they're all losing their grip. The second one says, it's getting simple. I've got the reins in my hands. It's never quite gone, but not too strong to withstand. And when I hold my breath, it's not denial of air. It's not to drown in a void. It's just a way to see clear. Breathing exercises that help with the anxiety. The chorus states, you can't just cover this up. It knows you down to the cell. It's left a mark on your tongue. Can you taste it? There's a permanence here. As much as knowing it hurts, it's not what all of us want, but this is coming to terms. What's interesting is I believe this is the voice of anxiety speaking, because finally, for one song in this, I have properly formatted lyrics that show who's singing what, and I have the Reddit Ask Me Anything post to see who is doing what voice. So there's anxiety to this, right? It says this is a coming to terms. The depression comes in after this. If this is coming to terms, I've got a clause of my own. The voice of the sufferer then says, if this is coming to terms, why are its claws at my throat? Using clause of my own as like a clause to a contract. And then using the homophone? Is it homophone or homonym? When they sound the same but are spelled different. Whatever one it is. We have the claws, like sharp nails. Claws are at my throat. And then anxiety says we're going to pull through and we're starting with you. And I wonder if this is anxiety being on the side of the sufferer, or if this was anxiety simply telling the sufferer, hey, dude, this is it. You think you've got control of us, but you don't. And it's this back and forth, this power battle going on inside of just trying to take control of your life despite the depression, despite the anxiety, despite the mental health issues. The entire bridge is just talking about how these elements will go into a death spiral and will tear you down alongside themselves if that's what it takes. Talking about tragedy, taking a toll and calling you home. It'll just be trauma and weakness. You'll be in our trembling hands. So I wonder then, like I mentioned earlier on, I assume that always, and again, we're going to focus on the consistent element of this stuff that you will never get rid of clinical depression or anxiety like this. That much like a recovering addict, you will always be in that recovering state. You never quite fully defeat it. It is simply going to be a part of your life. I think they kind of lined up with this, learning to take control of it and live alongside it the best that you can, rather than letting it control everything. So I wonder where they're going to go with the next track then, which is called Again. This could talk about the cycles of it, but it could also be a more uplifting tale here, continuously fighting it, or working alongside it, I suppose. Having every day being a little better than the last. Like the first verse of Always states, each time gets better and it feels like they're losing their grip. But the best way to find out just to dive in. So let's listen to this final track again. Very Law Dispute right here.
How the thoughts in my head get so crowded, or how everything makes me feel small, how I constantly feel I'm surrounded, or feel no one's around me at all, or feel nothing. Trade me anything just to feel something. Take your pick, take it all. We'll take all. Leave this broken Paris on.
Jeez.
We'll take
The really big low end, followed by like the quickly fluttering high end. That snare. This is not where I thought the music was going at all. What is this phrasing? So I'm pretty sure this is 4/4, but the accent pattern is wild. Let me just check something real quick. I thought I recognized that. And you know, it's not even really a majority of the music on that track. There's like 4 minutes of really aggressive, heavy, noisy, overbearing, weighty post-hardcore, lots of screaming going on that track. But that's actually not the part that got me. I mean, it is overwhelming. I was definitely becoming a bit emotionally overwhelmed, I suppose is the phrase. Kind of locking down and feels like the walls are closing, and it's just a very tense, anxious ending. There's no breaths, there's no moment to do anything, and it just keeps going. Most of these songs, despite getting close to like a 4-minute length, have a rather lengthy intro and outro. The core of the song for most of this is between 1:45 to about 2:15. This was pretty much high intensity from start to finish. 4 straight minutes of this. And I know it doesn't seem like a lot, especially when we've listened to 30, 40, 80-minute songs in the past. You're like, how can 4 minutes feel so long? But I'm so used to, comparatively on this album, for intense sections to be a bit on the shorter side. There's a lot of dynamic qualities on this track that ensure that the pacing feels right. We have our highs and our lows. But even that, like it just said, even if they decided to run 100% straight for the entirety of a core of a song, you're still looking at 2 minutes tops. And this doesn't. And it just keeps pushing and pushing and pushing. And when you really can't think that anything's going to get any worse, it drops out into this melancholic guitar line. And the instant melancholy of that felt like defeat. And that really got me. And then the realization that it's the beginning of the album. That's what the again means. Of course, I talked about the cyclicality of this. I never, for whatever reason, thought that they would go for a cyclical album, especially with the way that we were kind of pushing forward. Nocturne felt a bit more calm, always pushed in a direction of acceptance, of learning how to be and how to exist alongside these mental issues. I wasn't expecting a happy ending, but I wasn't expecting probably the most brutal track on the song emotionally, as well as weight and intensity and animosity. This song has hate in it. I don't know any other way to describe it. Listening to the intensity of the guitar riffs, listening to the massive jumps from the low end to the high end, the tension of constantly rubber banding between these two extremes as far as pitch is concerned, the multiple types of harsh vocals present constantly throughout this section. It just doesn't stop. The drummer doesn't stop. I haven't talked about the drums much at all. As much as I've loved what the drummer's doing, nothing's really stood out to me. This is very much, I think, a vocal heavy album. But I do want to put a little praise for the drummer, particularly in Again, since that's still fresh in all of our minds. There's 3 really solid drum patterns in there. There's some melodic work going on with the cymbals and the toms. There's not count. Why do I always forget this? Polyrhythmic ideas on the kit itself, which create further anxiety. This has actually been happening all throughout the album. It's kind of hidden in the background, but the drummer is actually really proficient at creating these hidden syncopated layers where if you're just really listening to the snare and the bass kick, you're just going to get that post-hardcore sort of punky rhythmic ideas, lots of syncopation, very driving, lots of momentum. But if you listen to the tom work, the cymbal work, you're going to find more melodic ideas in there. And I guess I've kind of not necessarily ignored it, but the emotional elements of the songs, particularly in reference to the melodic qualities, the vocal work and the guitar work, have really been what stood out to me. But this album, I don't think would be anywhere near as effective at crafting these atmospheres without a drummer like this, and maybe even more particularly without this drummer. The way that they craft rhythmic ideas that don't just keep the song moving forward, but can control the intensity and anxiety of a section based on its rhythmic devices, its interlocking layers rhythmically, and its ability to play alongside the guitarist. Seriously, if you have another 30 minutes, go through this album again and listen to just how many times the drummer is playing the same rhythm as the guitarist. I should say guitarist. The right guitarist is the one that does most of the wild things on this one. It's actually really incredible, and it is a massive disservice that I have ignored bringing up the drums at all this analysis, but they absolutely deserve a lot of praise for their inclusion to this and their role in making this album as powerful emotionally as it is. I don't know, dude. I don't even want to read the lyrics. I know they're going to be tough. I didn't pick up a single word in here, and I already know they're going to be tough to get through. All right, let's do it. Yeah. This is the cycle. You think you're getting better, and that's not the case. You were simply allowed to gain a little bit of ground, in order to trip you up when you least expect it. They say, we'll take hold, leave his bones as bare as our hearts, drain the life for him, make him empty and cold. Every happy thought you have is tagged with hidden costs. There's no way out. I don't think you'll understand. There's no rescue. Comes back, I believe, because these aren't formatted, to the sufferer, who says, I thought we were past this. I thought we were moving on. I thought you had gotten the message, but I guess I was fucking wrong. Just the bitterness in that it isn't just about this admission that maybe I misread what was going on. It's the pain in it. It's the acknowledgement that misreading the situation is making things worse. That any sort of gains you thought you were making were false. The voices come back. What's so wrong? Don't hang your head. This is solace in this depression. It's the only thing that's permanent. When everyone leaves, let nothing deceive you. We will always be here by your side. There is a refrain. It's the first stanza. I skipped it in discussing this, but it shows up at the end. Again, it says, if I had to talk simply about it, I'm sure I'd say nothing at all. How the thoughts in my head get so crowded, or how everything makes me feel small. How I constantly feel that I'm surrounded, or feel no one's around me at all, or feel nothing. Trade me anything just to feel something. Take your pick. Take it all. the idea that they've tried everything. That's what Pacifier was about. They've tried drugs, they've tried alcohol, they've tried prescription meds, they've tried home remedies. Nothing works. They would do anything just to have some of this removed. And because of that, their world feels so empty. He says, the thoughts in my head get crowded. He says, and I feel like I'm constantly surrounded or feel like no one's around me at all. And this is actually something interesting. The way that the vocalist says surrounded or feels like no one around me, something about that had a soft rhyme to it. I actually went back and listened to the track with the lyrics pulled up to find that section. And it's a really interesting soft rhyme. The words themselves don't, but something about it feels, I don't know, it just rolls off the tongue really well. Now, go back and listen to that. See if that's interesting to you. It doesn't add anything to the song, but I honestly thought there was a rhyme there, and there isn't. Maybe you thought the same thing. But he starts off the song saying, I'll do anything to alleviate a portion of this. Everything comes back in and basically tells him, dude, you're stuck with us for life and we're only going to make things worse for you because you tried to snuff us out a little bit ago. You thought you could get rid of us. The vocalist then pleads again, the sufferer, anything. I would trade anything just to feel something. Rising intensity into the massive melancholic drop to repeat the cycle of the album. Maybe I even understood a little bit of that while listening. I don't know. But I tell you, dude, my heart sank when that acoustic guitar came in and the rest of the music just quit. Yeah, earlier I said 10 out of 10 album here. I still stand by that. There's definitely a lot of parts of this album that I enjoy. Musically, sonically, this is right up my alley. This is my cup of tea. But I think even more so, if I didn't enjoy this music, the artistic integrity behind it, the emotional storytelling through it, and the lyrical writing across the entire bit while leaning into 3 vocalists who all represent different characters, or I should say different voices within the same person. It's all so masterfully done that I have nothing negative to say about this. This is masterpiece stuff right here. And it's effective too. That's the thing. I have no doubt in my mind that once I get through this album a couple of times, know the lyrics and can hear the lyrics within the emotional context of these sentences and feeling the vocalists deliver them with the nuance that they do with their harshes, with their cleans, and really getting that emotional component alongside the words, because the words are already quite heavy. This is a song that I think will consistently bring me to tears. And it almost got me at the end completely on musical themes. And that's in this environment of very analytical, kind of, focused entirely on technicalities and, meanings of everything. It's tougher to get me to well up and tear up a little bit because I'm in more of this, the stoic mindset of analyzing the emotion rather than feeling it. I know if I listen to this casually, I'm done for. It's going to be hard, even tougher to get through than it was here. I mean, even this final couple of tracks, man. That's going to wrap it up for today. I really appreciate this being brought to my attention, not just for the artistry of it, not just for the shedding a spotlight and bringing some of this stuff to conversation and putting it out there. Also, presumably the vulnerability of this. I don't think you can write this without having experience of this. Whether it is secondhand, someone close to you, or you yourself have gone through this. These aren't words that you would pick without having a good understanding of depression, of anxiety. So I'm going to assume there's some vulnerability in this too. I don't know what I don't remember what I was saying. This is just fantastic. I'm just going to leave it at that. These are my thoughts on Sufferer's Sufferer. Even naming the band and the album after the main character of the tale. Just another way to distance themselves from it. Yeah, I really appreciate that element. What did you think of this? Did you enjoy it? Is there anything you'd like to add on to what I said or correct me on? Do you have your own interpretation of things? I think I did a pretty good job digging into the lyrical and musical ideas, but by no means is it a perfect or thorough read on it. There can always be stuff added to the conversation. And if you've got a different take on this or an expansion of something I brought up that didn't lead into or whatever, man, put that stuff in the comments. Right, let's have a good conversation about this. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. It takes you here. I don't like promoting my stuff after stuff like this, man. It just feels weird. You guys know the drill. Be critical, not cynical, and I'll catch you all next time.